This was the plane that the entire aviation industry was super proud of. It took years to make, and it flew for over 30 years without any major issues. It was the world's first and last supersonic passenger aircraft, known today as Concorde. Supersonic means it could fly faster than the speed of sound, allowing passengers to cross the Atlantic Ocean in just 3.5 hours. But everything changed on July 25, 2000, when just 121 seconds overshadowed its 30 years of service. The model had to be discontinued for good. Before takeoff, there was no issue with the aircraft, but after the crash, during the investigation, a tiny metal strip the size of a pencil was blamed. But how could such a small metal strip bring down a 110,000-kilogram plane? And this led to the permanent discontinuation of the model. Welcome back, folks, to another story, this time about Air France Flight 4590, which was supposed to fly from Paris's Charles de Gaulle Airport to New York's JFK Airport, carrying a total of 100 people. There were 6 crew members and 3 pilots on board the legendary BAC Concorde, which is still considered the most stunning aircraft in the aviation industry. Many people even see it as a marvel of engineering. The biggest reason for this is that it flew at double the speed of regular passenger planes, allowing for trips between America and Europe to be done in just 3.5 hours instead of the usual 7. While the speed of sound is about 1,235 kilometers per hour, the Concorde flew even faster at a top speed of 2,180 kilometers per hour. The record has been set for flying at this speed thanks to the amazing wing design known as the Delta Wing. You usually see this kind of wing on fighter jets, but engineers also installed it on the Concorde to allow it to fly at supersonic speeds like those jets. The downside of the Delta Wing, though, is that it needs a lot of speed for takeoff. Not just speed, but the aircraft's angle of attack too, which is when the nose of the plane tilts upward for takeoff. For comparison, let's take a look at a normal passenger plane. The angle of attack during takeoff is pretty low, while with the Concorde, it's so high that the pilot can't see the runway ahead. That's why the Concorde's nose was designed to be flexible. It could be lowered during takeoff so the pilot could see everything in front. Speaking of speed, the Boeing 737 takes off at about 140 knots, or around 160 kilometers per hour, while the Concorde needs to reach speeds of up to 200 knots, which is about 230 kilometers per hour. That's a lot of speed. The gravel tires were under a lot of pressure, and in several incidents, they would burst. Over 30 years of service, there were 57 recorded instances of gravel tire bursts, but luckily, there wasn't any major damage. The tires tended to blow out at high speeds, which meant that the chunks could hit the wing like bullets, increasing the risk of punctures. Since, like other aircraft, the fuel is stored in the gravel wings, even a minor tire burst could lead to a fuel leak. That's why the engineers had to work on the early models of the Concorde. They made some changes to the landing gear and reinforced the tires. These changes pretty much solved the issue of tire bursts due to debris. This technical info is relevant to understanding the Air France 4590 incident. On July 25, 2000, at around 2:30 p.m., Air France Flight 4590 was all set for departure. Both pilots and a flight engineer were pretty experienced. After boarding the passengers, they requested permission from the tower to taxi to the runway. There are 2 runways at the airport in Paris. Runway 26A is long, and so is 26L, which is what Concorde also needed for takeoff. So, the control tower gave them permission to taxi to 26 Romeo. Flight 4590 got lined up on 26 Alpha after taxiing along the Romeo taxiway. But here's the issue. A Continental Airlines DC-10 was already on 26R, ready for takeoff, the same runway that Concorde was supposed to use. The DC-10 had to take off first, and then it would be Air France's Concorde's turn. Meanwhile, the Concorde's captain was doing the normal pre-takeoff checks. During checks, they review the weight and fuel of the plane again because that's what the takeoff depends on. Anyway, when the Continental Airlines DC-10 started its takeoff, a small metal strip fell off its right engine and landed on the runway. The pilot didn't notice anything and took off without a hitch. The time difference between the DC-10 and the Concorde's takeoff was so minimal that there wasn't even time for a runway inspection. Back then, French airports only did runway inspections twice a day. Now it's time to... Air France Flight 4590 got clearance from the control tower and engaged the thrust levers, meaning all 4 engines were at full power. It was 2:42 p.m., and this is where the next 121 seconds kicked off, eventually overshadowing a 30-year service record. The Concorde was now picking up speed on runway 26R. After 24 seconds, the first officer informed the captain that all 4 engines were functioning properly. 11 seconds later, the first officer signaled V1 to the captain, which means it's time to go for takeoff. The takeoff can't be aborted. The aircraft had already passed 1,700 meters down the runway, and 35 seconds had gone by. At 243 seconds, it made a slight left turn. Just keep in mind that all this info was also getting recorded in the flight recorder, which is also known as the black box. It wasn't the pilot who took the left turn. Rather, the left landing gear rolled onto a metal strip that had fallen from the DC-10's engine. The very next second, the left wheel, which was already under a lot of pressure, blew up with a bang. The question arises about how the investigation team figured out that the rock struck the tire because of that metal strip. Actually, the moment the plane took a left turn, the flight recorder captured the location where the metal strip was found. So, there was a 99% chance that the metal strip caused the tire to burst. Later in the video, it will also be proven that this metal strip belonged to the DC-10, and the leftmost tire of the rock had already burst. And everything was happening so fast. Things happened so quickly that no one noticed, but just moments later, the engineer's suspicions were confirmed. Pieces of the tire hit the fuel tank so hard that it exploded, and fuel started leaking under pressure. But that wasn't all. For some reason, a fire broke out immediately. At that moment, the aircraft began to drag to the left, and the captain pressed the right pedal to stabilize it, completely unaware that their plane was on fire. Meanwhile, the air traffic controller noticed that the plane had taken off right after it happened. Both left engines of the aircraft shut down due to smoke from the fire. The jet engines have an air intake on the front, where they pull in air to compress it. When smoke started coming in instead of air, the compressor got choked, leading to the failure of both engines. The flight engineer immediately initiated emergency procedures. During this time, ATC informed the captain that their aircraft was on fire and instructed them to land back at the airfield. Air France 4590 was now relying solely on its 2 right engines due to the shutdown of the left ones. The aircraft was struggling to gain altitude. In fact, it was having a hard time just maintaining its current height. The fire in the left wing had started melting the fuselage, which caused the aircraft to veer left. The captain tried to correct the course with a right turn to stabilize it, but that just reduced the speed even more. And speed was the one thing that could save the aircraft at that moment. Finally, at 121 seconds in, the left turn became more pronounced, and while losing altitude, the aircraft crashed into a hotel building. This incident happened in Concorde. After the accident, which involved 109 people and took 4 lives, the crash site was sealed off, and the investigation began right away. Like I mentioned earlier, investigators checked the runway using the flight data recorder to find the spot where the debris made a left turn. There, they spotted a metal strip. When they inspected the Continental Airlines DC-10, they found that the right engine indeed had that metal plate missing. When the investigation team looked into Continental Airlines' maintenance history, they discovered that this metal strip was repaired by going against the manufacturer's SOP, which was ignored not just once, but twice. They ended up drilling through it a total of 37 times and used some makeshift methods to fit it. That's why the engine couldn't handle the vibration and broke down on the runway. After this incident, all other similar aircraft were grounded because their tires were bursting at high speeds, which had already caused fatalities. 113 lives lost. Engineers couldn't come up with any real solution for several months. And then, in 2001, after 9/11, people all over the world were so scared that they totally gave up on flying. The ticket prices for Concorde were already way higher than regular planes, so there was no way they could start operating again in that situation. That's when they decided to permanently discontinue Concorde and keep it in a museum. Maybe in the future, humans will travel at supersonic speeds again. But for now, all we know is that there were 31 years in history when people traveled faster than the speed of sound. Let's hope for the best. Make sure to like and share the video. Thanks a ton for all your lovely comments.